The insurance authorization form trembled in my hands as I stared at the signature line. My ex-husband needed my approval for his kidney transplant, the same man who had packed his bags during my third round of chemotherapy. "I know I don't deserve your help," his message had read, "but I have no one else to turn to." Sitting in the home I'd rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal, I realized this moment wasn't about revenge or forgiveness. It was about who I had become, in the aftermath of abandonment. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The text message appeared on my husband's phone during my post-chemotherapy follow-up appointment. "Results look good? Can you come over tonight? I'm making your favorite dinner," followed by a heart emoji. Daniel's phone had lit up on the small table between us in the oncologist's waiting room, and though he quickly flipped it over, the damage was done. We were waiting for my 3-month scan results after my second round of aggressive chemotherapy for stage 3 ovarian cancer. Daniel had been increasingly distant during my treatment, absences he attributed to the pressure of covering our mounting medical bills. The strain of cancer on marriages was well documented. My oncologist had gently warned us about it during my initial diagnosis 8 months earlier. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice steady despite the sudden hollowness in my chest. The woman who had texted him wasn't me. I hadn't cooked a meal in months, barely able to stand in the kitchen through waves of nausea and fatigue. "Just work," Daniel replied smoothly, sliding the phone into his jacket pocket. "The Henderson account is having some issues with the campaign rollout." I nodded, the familiar weight of his lies settling between us like an unwelcome third presence in the sterile waiting room. Daniel was a marketing executive at Marshall Media, a mid-sized agency that had been understanding about his need for flexibility during my treatment. Or so he had claimed. "Dr. Evans will see you now, Mrs. Calloway." The nurse's voice cut through the tense silence, and Daniel stood, offering his hand to help me up. I took it automatically, the same hands that had held mine through the diagnosis, that had stroked my hair as it fell out in clumps, that had apparently been touching someone else while I fought for my life. In the examination room, Dr. Evans reviewed my scan results with cautious optimism. "The tumors have shrunk significantly. The treatment is working, Rebecca." Her warm smile and genuine enthusiasm should have been the highlight of my week, but my mind was elsewhere, piecing together a pattern I'd been too sick, too trusting, or too afraid to see clearly. Daniel's expression showed relief, but something else too. A flicker of something that looked almost like disappointment, quickly masked with a practiced smile. "That's fantastic news," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "We should celebrate tonight." "Yes," I agreed, watching him carefully. "Let's definitely do that." Dr. Evans outlined the next steps in my treatment plan. One more round of chemotherapy followed by potential maintenance therapy depending on my body's response. As she spoke, I calculated how long I had suspected something was wrong. The late 2 nights at the office. The new cologne I didn't recognize. The weekend business trips that seemed to multiply as my condition stabilized. The sudden password protection on his phone that appeared around my second round of treatment. All the signs had been there, but cancer had consumed my attention, my energy, my capacity to investigate what now seemed obvious. Or perhaps I hadn't wanted to face fighting 2 devastating battles simultaneously. "Do you have any questions, Rebecca?" Dr. Evans asked, her perceptive eyes noting my distraction. "How much longer will I need assistance with daily activities?" I asked, thinking quickly. "I'm wondering when I might be able to manage on my own." Dr. Evans tilted her head slightly. "Are you concerned about caregiver arrangements?" Daniel shifted in his seat. "I'm not going anywhere," he interjected, with a firmness that might have been convincing 3 months ago. "I just want to understand my prognosis completely," I replied, meeting Dr. Evans's gaze directly, woman to woman. Something in my expression must have communicated more than my words, because her response was measured and thorough. Many patients begin regaining independence after their third round, though energy levels vary considerably. I'd recommend maintaining your support system for at least another 3 months. She emphasized the last word slightly, giving me what I needed. Timeline. As we left the hospital, Daniel suggested picking up takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. Spring rolls and green curry? We should celebrate your good scan. That sounds perfect, I replied, maintaining the facade of normalcy while my mind methodically cataloged every resource at my disposal. Who could I call? Where could I go? What financial arrangements would I need to make? Cancer had taught me to fight strategically, to marshal my limited energy for battles that mattered. This would be no different. At home, as we ate dinner at our kitchen island, Daniel seemed almost jubilant, his relief at my improved scan results manifesting as unusual chattiness. He talked about future vacations, when this is all behind us, home renovation projects we could finally start, plans that stretched into a future he was actively undermining. "I've got a surprise for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a thin gold bracelet with a small diamond charm. "I saw this and thought of you, for strength and beauty, like my incredible wife." I accepted the bracelet, the metal cold against my palm. "It's beautiful, Daniel. Thank you." I wondered if he had purchased it before or after texting his response. "To the woman who was making his favorite dinner tonight." I clasped it around my wrist anyway, recognizing it for what it was, a token of his guilt, not his affection. "I need to make a quick call," Daniel said after dinner. "The Henderson team is waiting on some approvals." He stepped onto our back patio, closing the door behind him. Through the glass, I could see his animated expression, the genuine smile that hadn't been directed at me in months. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of excitement I recognized from happier times. I didn't need to hear the conversation to understand its nature. The pieces had fallen into place with devastating clarity. While I had been fighting for my life, Daniel had been building an exit strategy. When he returned, I had already cleared the dinner containers and was sitting on the couch with my laptop, researching something he didn't bother to ask about. "Everything okay with work?" I asked. "All sorted," he replied, sitting beside me and placing his hand on my knee. "How are you feeling? Not too tired from today?" "Actually, I'm feeling stronger than I have in months," I answered truthfully. The clarity of certain knowledge had provided an unexpected surge of energy, a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. As Daniel showered before bed, I opened his briefcase, something I had never done in our 8 years of marriage. Inside, alongside work documents and his company laptop, I found a brochure for the Overlook, a luxury apartment complex across town. A unit was circled on the floor plan, with a move-in date noted for the following month, 2 weeks after my scheduled final round of chemotherapy. So that was the timeline. He would stay until my treatment was technically complete, fulfilling some minimal interpretation of his vows, in sickness and in health, before beginning his new life. The life he had already been rehearsing while I endured IV drips and radiation burns, bone-deep fatigue, and the particular indignity of losing control over my own body. That night, as Daniel slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my mind unusually sharp despite the lingering effects of my treatment. What I felt wasn't just betrayal or heartbreak, though both were present. What crystallized in those quiet hours was something unexpected, a cold, clear determination. Cancer had tried to kill me, but I was still here. I had endured pain I never imagined possible, faced my mortality, and continued fighting. In comparison, surviving Daniel's betrayal seemed almost straightforward. I would not confront him tonight. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break, of casting me as the hysterical, sick wife he had been justified in leaving. Instead, I would plan, prepare, and protect myself with the same methodical focus I had applied to my treatment protocol. By morning, I knew exactly what I would do. Before I share what happened the morning after discovering Daniel's betrayal, drop your location in the comments below. If this story resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I'm sharing the emergency financial protection plan that saved me when I was at my most vulnerable. Daniel and I met 9 years ago at a charity fundraiser for cancer research, an irony that isn't lost on me now. I was coordinating the event through my position at the Westlake Foundation, and he was attending with his marketing firm, which had donated services for the campaign. I remember how he stood out in the crowd, not just because of his height or his well-tailored suit, but because of the intensity with which he listened when I spoke about the foundation's mission. "Most people are just here for the open bar and networking," he said, after approaching me near the end of the evening. "You actually care about the cause." His observation caught me off guard. I did care, deeply. My mother had died from breast cancer when I was in college, and working for the foundation gave purpose to that loss. Daniel's ability to see that connection, to recognize my passion beneath the professional event coordinator exterior, felt like a rare moment of genuine connection in a room full of surface-level conversations. He asked for my number that night, and our courtship unfolded with the kind of thoughtfulness that seemed to confirm my first impression. Weekend hiking trips where he packed my favorite sandwiches, surprise deliveries of books by authors I'd mentioned in passing, handwritten notes left on my pillow when he had early morning meetings. 6 months later, he proposed during a sunset picnic at Lakeview Park, the same place my parents had gotten engaged 30 years earlier, a detail I'd mentioned only once. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "I want to build something real with you, Rebecca," he said, sliding the emerald ring onto my finger. "Something that lasts." I believed him completely. How could I not? Every gesture, every choice showed a man who paid attention, who valued connection and commitment. We married the following spring in a small ceremony at my family's lakeside cabin, surrounded by 50 guests who celebrated with us under twinkling lights strung through the trees. My father, still grieving my mother's absence at such a milestone, nevertheless gave a heartfelt toast to the man who would continue the tradition of adoring my daughter exactly as she deserves. The first few years of marriage fulfilled every expectation. We settled into a renovated Craftsman in Oak Ridge Heights, advancing in our respective careers. Daniel at Marshall Media, where he quickly rose to become their youngest executive creative director, and I at the Westlake Foundation, eventually becoming director of community partnerships. We traveled, maintained close friendships, and began discussing starting a family once Daniel secured his next promotion. Looking back now, I can identify the first subtle shift in our relationship. It coincided with my father's health scare 3 years into our marriage. Dad had a minor stroke, and I temporarily scaled back my foundation work to help with his recovery. During those 3 months, Daniel was supportive but increasingly absent, citing a major new client that required frequent late nights and weekend work. "This account could change everything for us," he explained when I expressed disappointment about his missed visits to my father. "Just a few more months of hustle, then we'll have more security, more flexibility when we start our family." I accepted his reasoning because it aligned with our shared goals and values. We both wanted financial stability before having children, and his dedication to his career had always been part of what I admired. But something had changed in the quality of his absences. They no longer felt like sacrifices we were making together toward a common future, but rather like relief from the messy reality of illness and caregiving. Once my father recovered and I returned to my normal work schedule, Daniel and I seemed to find our rhythm again. We resumed our weekend hikes, our dinner parties with friends, our plans for expanding our family. If he continued to work late more often than before, I attributed it to the natural progression of his career and the increasing responsibilities that came with his success. The second warning sign appeared during a routine physical 2 years later, when my doctor discovered concerning irregularities in my blood work. After several follow-up tests, we learned I had a benign ovarian cyst that required monitoring but not immediate intervention. There's a small chance it could become problematic down the road, my doctor explained, so we'll keep an eye on it with regular scans. It shouldn't affect your fertility plans, but I'd recommend not delaying too long if having children is important to you. When I shared this information with Daniel, his response was measured but telling. Let's wait until things stabilize with your health before making any major life changes, he said, his voice carefully neutral. There's no rush. This reasonable-sounding caution marked the beginning of a pattern. Each time I raised the subject of starting our family, Daniel found logical reasons to postpone: a potential agency merger, a promising investment opportunity that required capital, the ideal timing for my career trajectory. All sensible considerations, presented with genuine concern for our future security and my well-being. What I didn't recognize then was how these postponements consistently centered his priorities while appearing to be mutual decisions. The deception wasn't in what he said, but in how he framed our choices to make his preferences seem like our shared conclusion. The third and most significant warning sign came 6 months before my cancer diagnosis, when Daniel began a comprehensive home office renovation. He replaced his desk, installed new cabinetry, and most notably, added a sophisticated lock to the door. All changes he attributed to the increasing confidentiality of his client work. Some of these accounts involve pre-launch products, he explained when I questioned the new security measures. The agency could be liable if information leaked. Again, his explanation seemed reasonable. His position did involve confidential marketing strategies for major brands. But the timing of this sudden concern for security, after years of leaving client materials openly visible in our shared space, should have raised more questions than it did. Around this same time, Daniel established a separate checking account for what he called business development expenses. When I asked about these changes to our previously transparent financial arrangements, he presented them as organizational improvements rather than deliberate separations. It's just cleaner for tax purposes, he said. Our accountant recommended it. Perhaps the most revealing warning sign wasn't something Daniel did, but rather something my closest friend Mia observed during a dinner party at our home. As we cleaned up in the kitchen afterward, she mentioned casually, "Daniel seems different lately, more checked out. Is everything okay with you two?" "We're fine," I replied automatically. "He's just under a lot of pressure at work." Mia gave me a long look. "Rebecca, I've known you both for years. This isn't just work stress. He barely looked at you all evening, and when he did, it wasn't with, I don't know, the way he used to look at you." I dismissed her concerns, attributing them to her recent divorce and subsequent wariness about relationships. "Not everyone falls out of love, Mia. Some of us are doing just fine." But her observation lingered, causing me to pay closer attention to the subtle changes in Daniel's behavior. The decreased physical affection, the perfunctory conversations about my day, the way he seemed to perform connection rather than experience it. Still, I might have continued attributing these changes to normal relationship evolution if cancer hadn't forced a more dramatic revelation. 3 weeks after that dinner party, my routine monitoring scan revealed that the benign cyst had grown significantly and developed concerning characteristics. A biopsy confirmed stage 3 ovarian cancer, with a treatment protocol that would begin immediately. Surgery followed by aggressive chemotherapy. The diagnosis was devastating, but Daniel's initial response seemed to confirm everything I wanted to believe about our marriage. He took charge of researching treatment options, coordinating with my insurance, reorganizing our home to accommodate my recovery. He attended every appointment, asked insightful questions, created spreadsheets, tracking my medications and symptoms. What I couldn't see then was how his support existed primarily in these tangible, documentable actions, the kind that could be pointed to later as evidence of devotion. The emotional foundation of that support, genuine presence, compassion, the simple act of sitting with me in my fear, was increasingly absent. By my second round of chemotherapy, when the physical toll became more visible and the timeline for recovery less certain, the gaps in his support widened. Business trips multiplied. Late nights became the norm rather than the exception. His phone was suddenly never more than an arm's length away, and always positioned screen down. Each absence, each distraction had a reasonable explanation. Each emotional withdrawal could be attributed to the undeniable stress of watching a spouse battle a life-threatening illness. The narrative he constructed, of the devoted husband balancing the demands of supporting a sick wife and maintaining the financial stability we needed, was entirely plausible. So plausible that I might have believed it indefinitely if not for that text message in Dr. Evans' waiting room, the message that illuminated all these warning signs in retrospect, transforming them from isolated incidents into a clear pattern of incremental betrayal. Looking back now, I recognize that the warning signs were never subtle. I was simply expert at interpreting them in ways that preserved my understanding of our marriage. Each questionable action was contextualized within a narrative of mutual goals and temporary sacrifices. Each emotional withdrawal attributed to external stressors rather than internal disconnection. The most painful truth isn't that I missed the signs of Daniel's infidelity. It's that I actively participated in explaining them away. I was so invested in the story we had created together, of partnership, commitment, and future plans, that I became complicit in ignoring evidence that contradicted this narrative. Perhaps that's the most insidious aspect of betrayal in its early stages. It asks for your cooperation in its concealment. It relies on your desire to believe the best about someone you love, to find reasonable explanations for unreasonable behaviors. It transforms your capacity for trust from a strength into a vulnerability that can be exploited. But recognizing this pattern would ultimately become my greatest protection during the challenging months ahead. Because once you understand how you've been deceived, not just by another person, but by your own need to believe, you develop an immunity to that particular form of manipulation. You learn to trust evidence over explanation, patterns over promises, actions over words. And most importantly, you learn to trust yourself. The morning after discovering Daniel's betrayal, I woke before sunrise, my mind unusually clear despite the emotional and physical exhaustion of the previous day. Daniel was still asleep, his breathing deep and regular, oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred in our marriage. I slipped quietly from our bed, my body moving with deliberate care to avoid disturbing him. In the kitchen, I made a cup of ginger tea, one of the few things that settled my post-chemo nausea, and carried it to my small home office, the room that had become my sanctuary during treatment. Unlike Daniel's newly renovated and locked workspace, mine remained open and unchanged, walls covered with photographs from happier times, shelves lined with books on nonprofit management and community development, my life's work visible in every corner. I opened my laptop and created a new document titled Assessment and Action Plan. The clinical, almost detached title reflected my state of mind. Cancer had taught me the importance of approaching overwhelming situations methodically, of breaking seemingly insurmountable challenges into manageable components. This would be no different. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was facing. I began by listing what I knew with certainty. Daniel was involved with someone else. The text message confirmed an intimate relationship extending beyond professional boundaries. He had secured a new apartment, with plans to move approximately 2 weeks after my final chemotherapy treatment. Our finances, once transparent and jointly managed, had been carefully compartmentalized over the past year. My health insurance was provided through Daniel's employer, a comprehensive policy that covered the specialized oncologists and treatments my condition required. My current medical situation included one more scheduled round of chemotherapy, followed by a critical evaluation period to determine whether additional treatment would be necessary. This clinical inventory of facts helped center me. Cancer patients become accustomed to assessment of blood counts, tumor markers, treatment responses. Applying this same analytical approach to my marriage felt strangely appropriate, even comforting in its familiarity. The most immediate concern was healthcare coverage. Losing my insurance in the middle of cancer treatment could be catastrophic, both medically and financially. I opened a new browser tab and logged into the insurance portal using credentials I had established during my initial diagnosis. The policy details confirmed my suspicions. As a spouse, my coverage would terminate upon legal separation or divorce, with a COBRA option that would be prohibitively expensive given my inability to work full-time during treatment. Next, I assessed our financial situation. While Daniel had created separate accounts for his business expenses, our core finances remained formally joined. Our checking and savings accounts were jointly held, as was the mortgage on our home. We shared 2 credit cards, both in good standing with significant available credit. Our retirement accounts were separate by nature, but named each other as beneficiaries. I pulled up our most recent bank statements, noting the regular transfers to Daniel's separate account, $2,000 on the first of each month, increasing to $3,500 over the past 3 months. The amounts were substantial, but not suspicious enough to have triggered alarms during my treatment-focused months. Now, they represented a clear pattern of financial preparation for separation. The home equity calculation was straightforward. We had purchased the house 6 years ago with a significant down payment, partly funded by my inheritance from my mother. The property had appreciated considerably, and we had religiously made extra principal payments. According to the most recent assessment, our equity position was approximately $275,000, a significant asset that would need to be addressed in any separation. As I continued my evaluation, a notification appeared on my screen, a calendar reminder for a doctor's appointment scheduled for the following week with Dr. Morris, my radiation oncologist. This prompted me to open my medical files folder, where I kept detailed records of my treatment plan, test results, and consultation notes. The comprehensive nature of these records gave me an idea. I had meticulously documented every aspect of my cancer journey. Perhaps similar documentation would serve me well in navigating this new crisis. I created a new folder labeled Transition, Documentation, and began taking screenshots of our financial accounts, saving copies of statements, and recording the dates and amounts of unusual transactions. By 7:30 a.m., I had compiled a comprehensive assessment of my situation. The picture wasn't as bleak as my emotional state might have suggested. I had resources, financial, informational, and personal, that could be leveraged strategically. What I needed now was expert guidance to determine the optimal sequence of actions. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Elise Winters. Elise was a divorce attorney I had met through the Westlake Foundation's legal aid program. We had collaborated on several community initiatives and developed a friendly professional relationship. If anyone could provide clear-eyed advice on my situation, it would be Elise. I sent her a text. Elise, I need to consult with you professionally on a confidential matter. Do you have availability today or tomorrow? It's urgent, but needs to be kept completely private. While waiting for her response, I heard Daniel stirring in the bedroom. I quickly closed my laptop and returned to the kitchen, where I began preparing his usual breakfast smoothie alongside a simple piece of toast for myself, one of the few foods I could tolerate during treatment. "You're up early," Daniel observed, entering the kitchen in his running clothes. "Couldn't sleep?" "Just feeling unusually energetic after yesterday's good news," I replied, handing him the smoothie with a practiced smile. "I thought I might actually get some foundation work done this morning." "That's great," he said, his relief almost palpable. My improved health meant his timeline remained intact. "I have that breakfast meeting with the Hendrickson team. Then, I'll be at the office until around 6. Will you be okay on your own?" The concerned husband performance was flawless, solicitous but not hovering, attentive but respecting my independence. If I hadn't seen the apartment brochure, hadn't read the text message, I might still have believed it. "I'll be fine," I assured him. "Mia mentioned she might stop by this afternoon anyway." This was a calculated addition. Mia had made no such plans, but mentioning her served two purposes. It provided a plausible reason for any unexpected activity at the house while Daniel was gone, and it subtly established that I wouldn't be isolated during the day. People who are planning exits often worry about their partner's emotional stability. Providing reassurance on this front would make Daniel less vigilant. After Daniel left for his meeting, my phone buzzed with a response from Elise. "I can see you at 11:30 today at my office. Back entrance if you prefer discretion. No charge. For initial consultation." I texted Mia next. "Need a ride to an appointment at 11:30. Sensitive matter I'll explain in person. Can you help?" Mia's response was immediate. "Of course. I'll be there at 11. No questions until you're ready." This was why Mia had remained my closest friend for over 15 years. She understood the value of unconditional support without interrogation. With these arrangements in place, I returned to my office to prepare for the consultation with Elise. I needed to be precise about my priorities, clear on my questions, and efficient with her time. Cancer had taught me the importance of being an active participant in my treatment rather than a passive recipient of experts' decisions. The same principle would apply here. I created a concise summary document covering my medical situation, financial status, and immediate concerns. I added specific questions about timing, strategy, and protective measures. Then I gathered key supporting documents, insurance policy details, bank statements, property records, and medical treatment plans, and organized them in a folder. This methodical preparation calmed me, providing a sense of agency that had been temporarily shaken by Daniel's betrayal. Throughout my cancer treatment, I had learned that knowledge and preparation were powerful antidotes to fear. Understanding the biological mechanisms of my disease, the purpose of each treatment component, and the expected side effects had transformed an overwhelming diagnosis into a series of manageable challenges. I was applying the same principle to this new crisis. Breaking down the seemingly insurmountable betrayal into its component parts, financial implications, healthcare considerations, legal options, emotional impact, made it less overwhelming, more navigable. By the time Mia arrived to drive me to Elise's office, I had transformed from a betrayed cancer patient into a woman with a comprehensive assessment and a developing strategy. The hurt remained, a dull ache beneath the analytical surface, but it no longer threatened to consume me. Mia's expression when I opened the door conveyed immediate concern. "Rebecca, what's happening? Are you okay? Is it the cancer?" "The cancer's responding well to treatment," I assured her, gathering my folder and purse. "This is about Daniel. I'll explain in the car." During the 15-minute drive to Elise's downtown office, I provided Mia with a succinct overview of what I had discovered. Her reactions progressed from shock to outrage to protective determination. "That absolute monster," she said finally, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles whitened. "To do this while you're fighting cancer, it's beyond cruel, it's sociopathic." "I need strategic thinking right now, not emotional reactions," I said gently. "There will be time for anger later. Right now, I need to protect myself medically and financially." Mia glanced at me, her expression softening. "How are you so calm about this?" I considered her question carefully. Cancer changes your perspective. When you've faced your mortality, betrayal hits differently. Don't mistake my composure for lack of pain. I'm devastated. but I've learned that emotional collapse is a luxury I can't afford right now. Clear thinking is my best protection." Mia nodded, blinking back tears that I couldn't yet allow myself to shed. "Tell me what you need. Anything." "Right now, I need you to wait while I meet with Elise, then help me implement whatever steps she recommends. And I need your absolute discretion. Daniel can't know that I've discovered his plans until I've secured my position." "You have my word," Mia promised as she pulled into the parking garage adjacent to Elise's office building. "I'm with you, every step of the way." Elise Winter's office reflected her professional approach, elegant but practical, designed to put clients at ease while maintaining appropriate boundaries. She greeted me with a warm handshake and concerned eyes, gesturing to a comfortable seating area rather than positioning herself behind her imposing desk. "Rebecca, I was surprised to receive your message. What can I help you with today?" I handed her the summary document I had prepared. I need advice on how to protect myself legally, financially, and medically in preparation for my husband's imminent departure. As you'll see, the situation is complicated by my ongoing cancer treatment. Elise scanned the document quickly, her expression remaining professional despite the difficult circumstances it outlined. "You've been very thorough in your assessment," she noted. "That will make this process more efficient." For the next hour, Elise asked precise questions, took detailed notes, and occasionally referenced legal statutes on her tablet. Her approach was exactly what I needed: compassionate but practical, focused on solutions rather than emotional validation. "Based on what you've shared," she said finally, "we need to address several priorities in a specific sequence. Your medical coverage is the most critical immediate concern, followed by financial protection and documentation of assets." She outlined a series of steps, beginning with an immediate application for individual health insurance through a special enrollment period triggered by my medical condition, followed by strategic financial moves to secure necessary treatment funds and living expenses. "The timing here is delicate," Elise cautioned. "Moving too quickly could alert Daniel, but waiting too long leaves you vulnerable. We need to execute these steps in a coordinated sequence." As our consultation concluded, Elise handed me a detailed action plan with specific tasks, timing recommendations, and resource contacts. "Rebecca, I've handled many divorce cases involving serious illness," she said, "but your clear-headed approach is exceptional. Most people in your situation are too overwhelmed to function effectively." "Cancer doesn't give you the option of falling apart," I replied. "You learn to compartmentalize, to focus on the next necessary step rather than the entire journey. I'm just applying those same skills to this situation." Leaving Elise's office with a concrete plan transformed my emotional landscape. I was no longer merely reacting to betrayal. I was actively shaping my response, reclaiming agency in a situation designed to diminish my power. Daniel had calculated his exit based on my vulnerability, but he had underestimated the strength that vulnerability had forced me to develop. As Mia drove us back toward my house, I reviewed Elise's action plan, mentally prioritizing the steps I would begin that afternoon. The path ahead was challenging, but no longer undefined. I had experts guiding me, resources to draw upon, and a methodical approach to navigate this crisis. "Are you really as okay as you seem?" Mia asked as we neared my neighborhood. "No," I admitted. "I'm heartbroken, furious, and terrified, but I've learned that feelings can coexist with function. I can acknowledge the pain while still taking necessary action. Cancer taught me that, to feel everything without being incapacitated by those feelings." "That's actually incredible," Mia said softly. "Most people never learn that skill." "It wasn't a lesson I chose," I replied, watching familiar houses pass by the window, "but it's serving me well now." And in that moment, I recognized an unexpected truth. The very crisis that had made me vulnerable to Daniel's betrayal had also equipped me with exactly the skills I needed to survive it. As I implemented the first steps of Elise's action plan over the following week, I discovered that Daniel's betrayal extended far beyond a romantic affair and secret apartment. The layers of deception unfolded like a complex origami pattern, each fold revealing another hidden facet that fundamentally altered my understanding of our marriage and financial situation. 3 days after my consultation with Elise, I visited First Community Bank while Daniel was at a client presentation. An absence I'd verified was actually a lunch date with his mistress, thanks to the private investigator Elise had recommended. I'd requested copies of our joint account statements for the past 18 months, documentation I was legally entitled to as an account holder. The bank manager, Ms. Wilkins, reviewed my identification and processed the request efficiently, but hesitated before handing me the printed statements. "Mrs. Calloway, I notice you've only requested information on your joint accounts," she said carefully. "Would you also like documentation for your other accounts with us?" "What other accounts?" I asked, my voice steady despite the sudden acceleration of my heartbeat. Ms. Wilkins looked momentarily confused. "The business account under Calloway Consulting and the personal savings account established last year. They're not joint accounts, but they're linked to your profile in our system." I maintained my composure with practiced effort. "Yes, I'd like complete documentation for all accounts associated with either myself or Daniel Calloway, please." 20 minutes later, I left the bank with a portfolio containing revelations far more substantial than I'd anticipated. In addition to our known joint accounts, Daniel had established a business account under Calloway Consulting, an entity I'd never heard of, with deposits totaling $183,000 over the past 14 months. A personal savings account with a current balance of $97,450, funded primarily through transfers from the business account. A safe deposit box registered solely in his name, accessed regularly over the past year. The transactions painted a clear picture of systematic financial diversion, client payments that should have gone to his employer, Marshall Media, instead channeled through this fictional consulting business, then partially transferred to his hidden savings account. The dates corresponded with his increasingly frequent client dinners and weekend presentations. This wasn't merely an exit strategy, it was potential embezzlement. I scanned through the statements again, noting deposit amounts and sources. Several payments had come from companies I recognized as Marshall Media clients, including Henderson Global, the account he had referenced when explaining the text message in Dr. Evans's waiting room. The implications were staggering. Daniel wasn't just leaving me, he was likely committing fraud against his employer, creating potential legal jeopardy that could affect our shared assets and my access to health insurance. The timeline suddenly made painful sense. He needed to maintain his position at Marshall Media until my treatment concluded, preserving my insurance coverage while he built his escape fund. I called Elise immediately from my car. "The situation is more complicated than we thought," I explained, summarizing my discoveries. "This changes the risk assessment considerably." Elise's response was measured but urgent. "This accelerates our timeline. Financial fraud creates additional exposure for shared assets. We need to implement protective measures immediately." She outlined modified next steps, emphasizing the critical importance of documenting everything without alerting Daniel to my knowledge. "Don't confront him about any of this yet," she cautioned. "We need to secure your position first." That afternoon, I took the first decisive steps toward financial protection. Following Elise's guidance, I opened a new individual account at a different bank under my maiden name, funded with a cashier's check for $15,000 from our joint account, an amount significant enough to cover immediate medical and living expenses, but not so large as to trigger Daniel's suspicion. Filed for an emergency individual health insurance policy through the state exchange's special enrollment provision for critical health conditions, using copies of my medical records to support the application. Contacted my father's estate attorney to verify the status of a small trust my parents had established, which I had never accessed during my marriage. Applied for short-term disability benefits through a policy I'd maintained independently through the Westlake Foundation, submitting documentation of my cancer treatment and prognosis. Each action required careful energy management. Still weakened from chemotherapy, I needed to pace myself, scheduling these tasks between rest periods and maintaining the appearance of normal recovery activities when Daniel was home. The most challenging aspect wasn't the physical toll, but maintaining the facade of ignorance. Each evening, Daniel returned home with performative concern, asking about my day, my symptoms, my medication schedule, questions designed to reinforce his narrative as the devoted husband supporting his sick wife. I responded with the measured appreciation he expected, never revealing the systematic dismantling of our shared fiction. The depth of the deception became even clearer 2 days later, when I received a call from Bryce Sullivan, my primary care physician for the past decade. "Rebecca, I'm following up on your appointment yesterday. How are the new medications working for your anxiety?" he asked. I paused, confused. "I didn't have an appointment yesterday, Dr. Sullivan." There was a long silence before Dr. Sullivan spoke again, his tone shifting to one of professional concern. "Someone came in yesterday with your insurance information and ID, complaining of severe anxiety related to your cancer treatment. I prescribed a moderate course of anti-anxiety medication, if that wasn't you." "It wasn't," I confirmed, my mind racing. "Was it a woman who resembled me, or—" "No," Dr. Sullivan replied carefully. "It was your husband, Daniel. He said he was picking up the prescription on your behalf because you were too fatigued to come in. Since I've known you both for years, I didn't question it." The realization crashed over me like a wave. Daniel was securing prescription medications in my name, powerful anti-anxiety drugs that, when combined with my existing treatment medications, could cause dangerous interactions or appear to exacerbate cancer-related symptoms. "Dr. Sullivan, I need you to flag my account for identity verification for all future appointments and prescriptions," I said, working to keep my voice steady. "And I need documentation of yesterday's visit and prescription details." "Of course," he agreed, clearly disturbed. "Rebecca, is something going on that I should be concerned about? As your physician." "I'm handling it," I assured him, "but I would appreciate your discretion and vigilance regarding my medical information going forward." After ending the call, I sat motionless at my kitchen table, absorbing this new dimension of betrayal. The scope of Daniel's deception had expanded beyond financial self-interest into something potentially more sinister. The prescription incident raised alarming questions about his intentions regarding my health and recovery. I called Elise again, this time requesting an in-person meeting. This development required immediate documentation and potentially legal intervention. She agreed to see me that afternoon. Before leaving the house, I took a crucial precaution, photographing the contents of our medicine cabinet, particularly my prescription medications, and noting their pill counts in a dated entry on my phone. If Daniel was planning to tamper with my treatment protocol, I needed baseline documentation of my legitimate prescriptions. At Elise's office, I provided a complete account of Dr. Sullivan's call and my concerns about potential medication interference. "This changes our approach," Elise said, her expression grave. "Financial deception is one thing. Potential medical endangerment is another entirely. We need to consider a protective order." "But that would alert Daniel to my knowledge," I pointed out. "If he realizes I'm aware of his plans, he might accelerate his timeline or take more drastic measures." "Which is precisely why we need legal protection in place first," Elise countered. "Rebecca, this situation has escalated beyond strategic financial planning for separation. The prescription incident suggests a willingness to potentially compromise your health." She outlined the process for obtaining an emergency protective order based on the documented evidence of financial deception and the unauthorized medical impersonation. "We can file tomorrow morning," she concluded. "In the meantime, I strongly recommend you not return to your home tonight." The suggestion struck me with unexpected force. Not return home? Despite everything I'd discovered, I hadn't yet contemplated immediate physical separation. My treatment protocol, my recovery routine, my carefully organized medication schedule, all were centered in the home I'd created and maintained through months of illness. I have nowhere else to go, I said, the practical reality of my situation suddenly overwhelming. My support system, my medical setup, everything is at the house. Elise leaned forward, her expression both compassionate and firm. Rebecca, the strength you've shown through this process is remarkable. But there's a difference between strategic patience and unnecessary risk. Given what we now know about Daniel's actions, returning to that house alone with him represents a risk I cannot in good conscience advise you to take. She was right, of course. The logical progression of Daniel's behavior, from financial deception to medical impersonation, suggested an escalating pattern that could potentially threaten my physical well-being. Yet the prospect of abandoning my home, particularly in my physically vulnerable state, felt like another profound loss atop an already staggering series of betrayals. Let me call Mia, I said finally. She has a guest room that could accommodate my immediate needs. As I made the arrangements with Mia, who responded with immediate and unquestioning support, I experienced a surreal detachment from the unfolding crisis. 6 months ago, I had been a successful professional with a seemingly solid marriage, facing the significant but manageable challenge of cancer treatment. Now I was effectively becoming homeless, fleeing the husband who had once pledged to stand by me in sickness and in health, while still battling the disease that had apparently accelerated his betrayal. Yet within this expanding crisis, I recognized something unexpected, a clarity of purpose and self-protection that cancer had taught me to cultivate. My diagnosis had stripped away pretense, forcing me to distinguish between essential priorities and peripheral concerns. That same discernment now guided me through this secondary crisis. While waiting for Mia to arrive, Elise helped me create a detailed plan for the next 48 hours, including the protective order filing, notification to my medical team about potential identity fraud, and secure transfer of personal documents and irreplaceable items from my home. We'll coordinate a time tomorrow when Daniel is confirmed to be at work, Elise explained. My assistant will accompany you and Mia to retrieve your essential belongings and medical supplies. The protective order, once granted, will legally bar Daniel from contacting you or accessing your new temporary residence. The systematic dismantling of my married life, compressed into a 48-hour action plan, should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it provided a framework for navigating an otherwise chaotic situation, much like my cancer treatment protocol had offered structure amid the physical and emotional turbulence of diagnosis. You're handling this with remarkable composure, Elise observed as we concluded our meeting. Most clients in your situation experience significant emotional distress that impacts their decision-making. Cancer changes your relationship with crisis, I explained. You learn to separate the emotional experience from the necessary actions. I'm devastated, terrified, and furious, but those feelings can't dictate my choices right now. As Mia's car pulled up outside Elise's office, I gathered the documentation we'd organized and prepared to temporarily leave behind the life I had built with Daniel. The home we had lovingly renovated, the routines we had established, the future we had planned, all now revealed as elaborate constructions built on a foundation of deception. Yet as I stepped into Mia's car, explaining briefly what had transpired, I realized that the expanding scope of Daniel's betrayal had paradoxically strengthened my resolve. Each new revelation clarified the necessity of my actions, eliminating any lingering doubt or misplaced hope for reconciliation. I can't believe this is happening to you, Mia said as we drove toward her house. First cancer, and now this. It's too much for anyone to handle. I looked out at the familiar streets of the city where I'd built my life, now transformed by this new perspective. Actually, I think cancer prepared me for exactly this kind of crisis. when you've faced mortality, you develop a certain clarity about what matters and what doesn't. Right now, what matters is protecting my health and future. Everything else, the house, the marriage, the life we built, those are things, not essentials. That's actually profound, Mia said softly. Terrible circumstances, but profound perspective. As we arrived at Mia's townhouse, I received a text from Daniel. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. How are you feeling? The casual deception, the performative concern, it all seemed so transparent now. I replied with practiced normalcy. Tired but okay. Taking my evening medications now. Might go to bed early. This small deception, my last, I hoped, would buy the time needed to implement the protective measures Elise had outlined. By tomorrow evening, the legal machinery would be in motion, creating a barrier between Daniel's escalating betrayal and my vulnerable recovery. As Mia helped settle me into her guest room, arranging my medications and making sure I had everything needed for my evening routine, I experienced a moment of profound gratitude amid the crisis. Cancer had taken much from me, energy, certainty, physical well-being, but it had also revealed the genuine support system that existed beyond my marriage. Thank you, I said simply, as Mia brought in a cup of my preferred ginger tea. For everything. You would do the same for me, she replied with certainty. That's what real commitment looks like. Her words resonated deeply, highlighting the contrast between Daniel's broken vows and the authentic support offered without hesitation by my friend. In the expanding crisis of betrayal, this contrast provided an unexpected clarity, a reminder that genuine connection existed even as my marriage revealed itself as an elaborate fiction. That night, in the unfamiliar quiet of Mia's guest room, I updated my assessment document, noting the day's revelations and the actions taken in response. The methodical documentation provided a sense of control amid circumstances that threatened to overwhelm. Each entry transformed chaotic betrayal into manageable facts. Each action plan converted helplessness into agency. Tomorrow would bring the formal legal proceedings, the retrieval of essential belongings, the official acknowledgement of my marriage's dissolution. But tonight, in this temporary sanctuary, I recognized that the expanding crisis had revealed not just the depth of Daniel's betrayal, but also the depth of my own resilience, a capacity to face devastating truth without being diminished by it. The morning after relocating to Mia's townhouse, I woke to the gentle chime of my medication alarm. For a disorienting moment, I forgot where I was, the unfamiliar ceiling, the different quality of light through unknown curtains. Then reality rushed back. The betrayal, the expanding deception, my hasty relocation to safety. I carefully took my morning medications, arranging the pills in their familiar sequence. Anti-nausea first, then the immune support supplements, followed by the hormonal therapy tablets. The ritual grounded me, a reminder that amid chaos, certain constants remained. My body still needed this care, regardless of how drastically my personal circumstances had changed. Mia had already left for work, leaving a note on the kitchen counter next to a prepared breakfast smoothie and my favorite herbal tea. Elise called. She'll pick you up at 9:30 for the court appointment. I took the day off to help with house things later. Call if you need anything sooner. The court appointment to file for the emergency protective order loomed as the day's first challenge. I showered carefully, mindful of the port in my chest that remained from chemotherapy, and dressed in the limited clothing I had brought with me. Simple black pants and a blue blouse that hung loosely on my still recovering frame. Clothing choices become significant when you're asking a judge to believe your account of events. Elise had advised professional but understated attire, avoiding anything that might appear theatrical or attention-seeking. We want the facts to speak for themselves, she had explained. Your credibility is already established through documentation. At precisely 9:30, Elise's sleek gray sedan pulled into Mia's driveway. She greeted me with professional warmth, her briefcase containing the meticulously organized evidence we had compiled: bank statements, medication records, Dr. Sullivan's report, photographs of the apartment brochure, and my comprehensive timeline of events. "The judge assigned to our case is Catherine Mendoza," Elise informed me as we drove toward the courthouse. "She's experienced with cases involving medical vulnerability and generally takes a protection-first approach when sufficient evidence exists." The family court building was an imposing structure of glass and stone, its formality underscoring the gravity of proceedings that occurred within. As we walked through security and navigated to the appropriate floor, I felt a strange calm descend. This was simply another medical appointment in my mind, another necessary procedure to protect my health and future. Judge Mendoza's chambers were unexpectedly warm, with framed photos of gardens on the walls and a small collection of legal textbooks arranged beside more personal volumes on her bookshelf. The judge herself was a woman in her 60s with silver-streaked dark hair and attentive eyes that missed nothing. "Ms. Winters, Mrs. Calloway," she acknowledged as we were seated. "I've reviewed your petition for an emergency protective order. Given Mrs. Calloway's medical situation, I've expedited this hearing." For the next 40 minutes, Elise methodically presented our evidence: the financial documentation, the unauthorized medical impersonation, the apartment arrangements coinciding with the conclusion of my treatment. Judge Mendoza listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions that revealed her thorough understanding of both legal and medical considerations. When it was my turn to speak, I focused on facts rather than emotions, emphasizing the pattern of escalation in Daniel's behavior and the potential medical risk created by the unauthorized prescription incident. "Mrs. Calloway," Judge Mendoza said finally, studying me with compassionate intensity, "your situation is unusual, in that many protective orders involve documented threats or physical intimidation. Here we have concerning patterns of behavior that suggest potential harm, but without explicit threats. What makes you believe you're in immediate danger?" I considered my response carefully. "Your Honor, cancer treatment teaches you to recognize patterns that precede crisis. When certain markers appear together in blood work, they signal potential complications before symptoms manifest. I'm applying that same pattern recognition to this situation. The financial deception, the medication interference, the timing of his planned departure, these factors together indicate escalating risk, particularly as I approach my final treatment." Judge Mendoza nodded, something like respect flickering in her expression. "A remarkably clear analysis given your circumstances." She closed the folder containing our evidence. "I'm granting the emergency protective order, effective immediately and extending through your final scheduled treatment plus 30 days. Mr. Calloway will be barred from contacting you directly, approaching your temporary residence, or accessing your medical information." Relief washed through me, not because I necessarily believed Daniel intended physical harm, but because the protective order created essential space, legal, physical, and psychological distance that would allow me to focus on my treatment without navigating his continued deception. As we left the courthouse with the signed order, I felt a curious lightness, despite the gravity of what had just transpired. "Thank you," I said to Elise as we walked to her car, "for believing me, for acting so quickly." "The evidence spoke for itself," she replied simply. "Now we move to the next phase, retrieving your essential belongings and communicating the order to Daniel through proper channels." The practical steps that followed were both surreal and methodical. A court officer was assigned to accompany us to my home during a time when Daniel would be at work, as confirmed by the private investigator who had documented his regular schedule. Mia met us there, bringing empty suitcases and storage containers for my belongings. Walking into the house that had been my home throughout my illness felt like visiting a museum exhibition of my former life. Everything appeared exactly as I had left it 2 days earlier, my tea mug still in the dish drainer, my oncology appointment calendar still magnetized to the refrigerator, the throw blanket on the couch still rumpled where I had last rested. Yet everything had changed. The familiar space was now revealed as the setting for an elaborate deception, each room containing memories I now had to reinterpret through the lens of betrayal. Working efficiently under the watchful eye of the court officer, Mia and I gathered my essential belongings: clothing, medical supplies, important documents, irreplaceable personal items. I deliberately left wedding photos and gifts, joint purchases, and shared mementos. Those would be addressed during formal asset division. Today's mission focused solely on necessities. In my home office, I carefully packed my laptop, external, hard drives, and professional files. As I reached for a folder containing foundation documents, my hand brushed against a small carved wooden box on the upper shelf, a gift from my mother during her final weeks. "Take what grounds you," she had said, placing the box in my hands from her hospital bed. "The storms will come. Have something solid to hold on to." Inside the box, I had kept small treasures: a polished stone from a meaningful hike, a handwritten note from my father, the delicate silver bracelet my mother had worn daily. I hadn't opened it since beginning cancer treatment, the memories too tender to revisit while facing my own mortality. Now, I carefully placed the box in my bag, recognizing it as exactly the anchor I needed in this current storm. My mother had faced her terminal diagnosis with remarkable grace, finding meaning even as time shortened. Her example had unconsciously guided my approach to cancer. Perhaps it could guide me through this betrayal as well. As we completed our efficient packing, the court officer received confirmation that Daniel had been officially served with the protective order at his office. This timing was intentional: professional setting, witnesses present, minimal opportunity for an uncontrolled reaction. "The security company will arrive within the hour to change the locks," Elise informed me as we prepared to leave. "The court order specifies that you retain primary residence rights during your medical treatment, with Mr. Calloway permitted one supervised visit to retrieve personal necessities." Standing in the doorway of what had been our bedroom, I surveyed the space one final time. The king-sized bed where I had spent countless hours recovering from treatments, the nightstand still organized with my symptoms journal and medication schedule, the framed photo of Daniel and me from healthier, happier days. "Are you okay?" Mia asked gently, touching my shoulder. "I'm not sure okay is the right word," I replied honestly. "But I'm clear about what's happening, what needs to happen next, what matters most right now." As we drove away from the house, my essential belongings packed in Mia's trunk, I felt neither triumphant nor defeated, simply resolved. The practical steps of the day had transformed abstract betrayal into concrete action, providing a framework for moving forward that focused on protection rather than punishment. Back at Mia's townhouse, as we organized my belongings in the guest room that would be my temporary home, my phone rang with a number I didn't immediately recognize. "Rebecca? It's Vivian Elliott." The voice transported me instantly to the hospital support group I had attended briefly after my diagnosis, a gathering of cancer patients and survivors sharing experiences and coping strategies. Vivian had been the facilitator, a 15-year breast cancer survivor whose wisdom and practical guidance had made a profound impression, though I had attended only 3 sessions before my treatment schedule made participation difficult. "Vivian, hello," I responded, surprised by the unexpected connection. "How did you—" "Mia contacted me," she explained. "She thought I might be able to offer some perspective on what you're facing now, if you're open to talking." I glanced at Mia, who was arranging my medications on the guest room dresser, her back carefully turned to give me privacy. This thoughtful connection was so characteristic of her support: practical, insightful, addressing needs I hadn't yet articulated. "I'd appreciate that very much," I told Vivian. "When would be convenient?" "I'm actually at the coffee shop. Around the corner from Mia's place, she replied. If you're feeling up to it, we could meet now, or I can come to you, if that's easier with your energy levels. 20 minutes later, I was seated across from Vivian at a quiet corner table. In Woodland Cafe, a ceramic mug of ginger tea warming my hands. At 63, Vivian embodied vibrant survivorship, her short silver hair framing an expressive face, her movements energetic but unrushed, her attention fully present. Mia gave me a broad outline, she said after we'd exchanged initial greetings. Cancer treatment and spousal betrayal simultaneously. That's a heavy combination. That's one way to put it, I agreed with a small smile. I'm still trying to determine which is the primary crisis and which is the complication. They're interwoven, Vivian said thoughtfully, but not inseparable. That's the first thing I want to offer you. Permission to address them as distinct challenges with different timelines and requirements. She stirred her tea, her silver bracelet catching the light. When I was going through treatment 15 years ago, my adult son developed a serious substance abuse problem. The timing seemed cruel, facing mortality while watching him self-destruct. Well-meaning people kept telling me, that's too much for anyone to handle at once. I hear that a lot, I acknowledged. People seem almost panicked by the combined circumstances. Exactly, Vivian nodded. But here's what I discovered. Crisis doesn't wait for convenient timing, and our capacity to handle difficult circumstances isn't fixed. It expands with necessity. The key is distinguishing between what requires immediate action and what can be processed more gradually. Her words crystallized something I had been intuitively approaching but hadn't fully articulated. Cancer treatment demands immediate, consistent action, I said slowly. The betrayal is painful, but the response can be more measured, more strategic. Precisely, Vivian confirmed. Your medical protocol has non-negotiable timing. Your emotional processing of betrayal can unfold on a different schedule. Give yourself permission to prioritize healing physically right now, while taking necessary protective measures regarding the marriage. The deeper emotional work of processing the betrayal can come when you have more physical reserves. For the next hour, Vivian shared insights from her own experience and from the hundreds of cancer patients she had counseled through complex life crises coinciding with treatment. Her guidance was never prescriptive, but consistently clarifying, helping me distinguish between essential priorities and what could be temporarily set aside. Cancer strips away pretense, she observed as our conversation drew to a close. It forces a clarity about what truly matters. That clarity can be painful when it reveals deception in important relationships, but it's ultimately a gift, the ability to see things as they actually are, not as we wish them to be. I thought about how quickly I had recognized the pattern of Daniel's betrayal once that first text message appeared. How cancer had already prepared me to acknowledge difficult truths rather than cling to comforting illusions. I've been approaching this betrayal with the same methodical focus I apply to my treatment, I admitted. Some people might find that cold or detached. Vivian's expression warmed with understanding. That's not coldness, Rebecca. That's wisdom. You're instinctively preserving your limited energy for healing, rather than burning it on rage or despair. Those emotions will have their place in your journey, but right now, your measured approach is protecting the resource you most need, your strength for recovery. As we prepared to leave, Vivian handed me a small notebook. I give these to everyone I mentor through combined crises. It's for recording moments of unexpected capacity, times when you surprise yourself with your own strength or clarity. On the hardest days, it helps to have concrete reminders of what you've already navigated successfully. The simple gift touched me deeply, not just for its practical value, but for the fundamental assumption it contained, that I would continue to find strength, that difficult moments would be interspersed with discoveries of my own resilience. Thank you, I said, accepting both the notebook and the perspective it represented. foreseeing this as a journey with multiple dimensions, not just an overwhelming tragedy. Cancer patients often develop an admirable skill, Vivian replied, with a gentle smile. The ability to hold contradictory truths simultaneously, acknowledging profound difficulty while recognizing capacity for growth. You're already demonstrating that skill in how you're handling this compound crisis. Walking. Back to Mia's townhouse in the gentle afternoon light, I reflected on Vivian's guidance. The clarity she had helped me articulate, distinguishing between the different demands of simultaneous crises, provided a framework for the challenging days ahead. My phone buzzed with a text from Elise. Protective order successfully served. Security system updated at house. Daniel's attorney has contacted me to arrange his supervised visit to collect essentials. We'll call tomorrow with details. The practical machinery of separation was in motion, creating the protected space I needed to focus on my primary battle, completing cancer treatment successfully. Daniel's betrayal had altered the landscape of my life dramatically, but it hadn't changed the fundamental priority of healing physically. As I reached Mia's front door, I opened Vivian's notebook and made my first entry. Today, I walked into the house I shared with my husband, gathered what I truly needed, and walked away without collapse. Cancer prepared me for this moment by teaching me to distinguish between what feels overwhelming and what actually is. It wasn't triumph or even acceptance, just a simple acknowledgement of capacity discovered in crisis. And for today, that was enough. Over the next week, I executed a comprehensive plan to secure my medical, financial, and emotional well-being while preparing for my final scheduled chemotherapy treatment. This methodical approach transformed overwhelming circumstances into a series of manageable actions, each building toward greater stability and protection. My first priority was ensuring uninterrupted health care. 3 days after obtaining the protective order, I met with my entire medical team, Dr. Evans, my oncologist, Dr. Morris, my radiation specialist, nurse practitioner Samantha Torres, who coordinated my care, and Dr. Sullivan, my primary physician who had inadvertently provided Daniel with unauthorized medication. We gathered in Dr. Evans' office, my medical records spread across her desk, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked the hospital's healing garden. I had prepared a detailed briefing document explaining my changed circumstances and the potential implications for my treatment plan. First, I want to assure you that my living situation is stable, I began, addressing their evident concern. I've relocated temporarily to ensure my safety and ability to focus on treatment without additional stress. Dr. Evans nodded, her expression professionally composed but with evident compassion. Rebecca, we support whatever measures you need to take for your well-being. Our primary concern is ensuring your treatment continues without disruption. I outlined the steps already taken, the protective order barring Daniel from accessing my medical information, the emergency application for individual health insurance coverage, and the financial arrangements to cover treatment costs during the transition period. The timing is challenging, I acknowledged. With my final scheduled treatment next week, any insurance disruption could affect not just that session, but the critical follow-up evaluation period. Dr. Sullivan leaned forward, his expression somber. I've submitted comprehensive documentation regarding the unauthorized prescription incident. Our legal department has flagged your records with the highest privacy protection level and implemented verbal passwords for all communications. Nurse Torres added practical details about the hospital's ability to provide financial bridge assistance for patients in crisis situations. We have programs specifically designed to prevent treatment interruption during insurance transitions. I've already initiated the application process on your behalf. The meeting concluded with a modified treatment plan that accommodated my changed circumstances. Transportation arrangements through the hospital's patient service program, appointment times coordinated with Mia's availability, and a direct line to the patient advocate who would help navigate any insurance challenges. As I gathered my materials to leave, Dr. Evans touched my arm gently. Rebecca, I've treated many patients through personal crises coinciding with cancer. Those who approach both challenges methodically, as you're doing, consistently show better outcomes, both medically and emotionally. Her validation of my approach provided unexpected reassurance. The compartmentalized analytical strategy that had emerged instinctively from my cancer experience wasn't an abnormal response to betrayal, but rather an adaptive one. With medical continuity secured, I turned my attention to financial protection. Elise had connected me with financial advisor Margaret Chen, who specialized in helping clients navigate economic separation during health crises. Margaret's office at Wellington Financial Partners reflected her approach, organized, elegant, and without unnecessary embellishment. During our 2-hour consultation, she reviewed the documentation I'd compiled and developed a comprehensive financial security plan. Based on what you've shared, Margaret explained, pointing to the spreadsheet she'd created, we need to address 3 distinct timeframes: immediate liquid resources for the next 30 days, intermediate coverage for the 6-month recovery, and legal process period, and long-term restructuring to establish your independent financial foundation. Together, we created a detailed implementation timeline. For immediate needs, I would maintain the separate account already established, funded with the initial $15,000 transfer plus an additional $5,000 from my parents' trust, which the estate attorney had confirmed was separately held and inaccessible to Daniel. For the intermediate period, Margaret helped me apply for hardship withdrawals from my retirement account, permitted without penalty under specific medical circumstances. These funds would cover living expenses and treatment costs not absorbed by insurance during the transition period. For long-term security, we documented my equity claim to the house and joint investments, establishing the foundation for the eventual divorce settlement. Margaret also helped me develop a modified career reintegration plan for when my health permitted returning to work, with potential part-time consulting opportunities at the Westlake Foundation in the interim. Many people in your situation make decisions based purely on emotional reactions, Margaret observed as we concluded. Your analytical approach is protecting your future security during a vulnerable time. With medical and financial foundations stabilized, I addressed the practical realities of temporary relocation. While Mia's generosity in providing immediate shelter had been essential, her 1-bedroom townhouse wasn't configured for long-term recovery needs. I needed a space that balanced independence with appropriate support. The solution came from an unexpected source. My father's younger sister, Aunt Catherine, owned a garden apartment adjacent to her home in Riverside Heights, a quiet neighborhood 15 minutes from the hospital. Originally built for her mother's elder care, the apartment had been occasionally rented to graduate students but was currently vacant. "It's yours for as long as you need," Aunt Catherine declared when I called to inquire about possibly renting the space. "It's fully accessible, has a separate entrance, and I'm close enough to help without hovering." 2 days later, I visited the apartment with Mia. The space was ideal for recovery: a bright 1-bedroom unit with wide doorways, a walk-in shower with grab bars, a small but functional kitchen, and a private patio overlooking Catherine's meticulously maintained garden. Most importantly, it offered the perfect balance between independence and support. Catherine was nearby if needed, but the separate entrance and complete apartment allowed me autonomy. "This is perfect," I told Catherine, emotion finally breaking through my careful composure. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," she replied simply. "Family shows up in crisis. Your mother would have done the same for my children." The mention of my mother, her wisdom, her grace through her own illness, provided unexpected comfort. I had been unconsciously following her example in how I navigated this compound crisis, drawing on strengths I had witnessed during her final journey. With a stable living arrangement secured, I turned to the emotional aspect of my strategic implementation. While the practical steps had provided essential structure, I recognized the need for psychological support to process the dual traumas of cancer and betrayal. Dr. Evans had recommended Dr. Layla Patel, a psycho-oncology specialist, who helped cancer patients navigate complex life crises that coincided with treatment. Unlike traditional therapy focused primarily on emotional processing, Dr. Patel's approach combined practical coping strategies with targeted psychological support. Our first session took place in her warmly lit office decorated with abstract paintings in soothing blues and greens. Dr. Patel began not by asking how I felt about Daniel's betrayal, but rather by acknowledging the practical steps I had already taken. "You've established remarkable structural protection in a very short time," she observed. "That's uncommon and speaks to significant resilience. Today, I'd like to focus on maintaining that resilience through your final treatment cycle." She introduced a framework she called parallel processing, the ability to implement necessary practical actions while allowing emotional responses to surface in controlled, contained ways. Many people assume they need to fully process betrayal emotionally before taking practical steps, she explained. But in situations involving health crises, that sequence isn't always possible or advisable. You need to protect your physical healing first, while creating specific, limited space for emotional processing. Dr. Patel helped me develop a structured approach to managing the emotional aspects of betrayal alongside cancer treatment. Daily journaling sessions limited to 20 minutes, providing contained space for emotional expression without allowing it to overwhelm my day. Compartmentalization with intention, consciously deciding when to focus on cancer treatment, legal protection, or emotional processing, rather than allowing these aspects to bleed together constantly. Regular physical movement appropriate to my recovery stage, recognizing the body's role in processing emotional trauma alongside physical healing. Specific communication boundaries with well-meaning supporters who might unknowingly drain my limited energy with their own emotional reactions to my situation. "The goal isn't to suppress your emotional response," Dr. Patel emphasized, "but rather to direct it in ways that support rather than undermine your physical healing. There will be time for deeper emotional processing once your treatment is complete." This structured approach to emotional management provided the final component of my strategic implementation. With medical continuity established, financial protection in place, stable housing secured, and emotional processing contained, I had created a comprehensive framework for navigating the weeks ahead. The day before my final scheduled chemotherapy treatment, I sat on the small patio of Aunt Catherine's garden apartment, reviewing my implementation journal. The concrete actions of the past week had transformed my circumstances from chaotic crisis to managed challenge. The emergency health insurance application had been provisionally approved, with coverage confirmed through the critical evaluation period following my final treatment. The financial protection plan had secured necessary resources for the next 6 months, with clear pathways established for long-term security. My essential belongings had been relocated to the garden apartment, creating a recovery environment, optimized for healing. Legal protection through the continued enforcement of the protective order had created essential separation from Daniel's escalating deception. Regular sessions with Dr. Patel had provided emotional containment strategies that preserved energy for physical healing. As I documented these achievements, Catherine appeared at the patio door with a small package. "This was delivered to my address for you," she explained, handing me a carefully wrapped parcel. Inside was a soft cashmere wrap in a gentle shade of blue, accompanied by a handwritten note from Vivian. "For tomorrow's treatment, something beautiful and practical to remind you of your own strength, holding you in my thoughts." The thoughtful gift brought unexpected tears, not of despair or self-pity, but of recognition that even amid betrayal and illness, genuine connection remained. Daniel's abandonment had revealed the hollowness of his commitment, but it had also highlighted the authentic support that surrounded me. That evening, as I prepared for the next day's treatment, I added a final entry to my implementation journal. Strategic protection isn't just about defending against harm. It's about creating space for genuine healing. Each practical step taken this week has built a foundation not just for survival, but for eventual thriving. This reframing shifted my perspective on the implementation process. What had begun as necessary defense against Daniel's betrayal had evolved into proactive creation of a healing environment aligned with my true needs and values. The strategic response to crisis was simultaneously becoming the architectural blueprint for a rebuilt life. As I completed my pre-treatment medication protocol and prepared for sleep, I experienced a moment of unexpected clarity. The implementation wasn't merely about managing dual crises, it was about reclaiming agency in circumstances designed to diminish it. Cancer had attempted to override my physical autonomy. Daniel's betrayal had tried to undermine my emotional security. My structured, methodical response was simultaneously an act of resistance and reconstruction. Tomorrow would bring the physical challenge of final treatment, with its attendant discomfort and temporary debilitation. But I would face it from a foundation of comprehensive protection and support, a foundation I had built deliberately, strategically, in the midst of circumstances that could have easily overwhelmed less focused determination. That knowledge provided not comfort exactly, but something more substantial, the quiet confidence of demonstrated capacity. I had implemented what was necessary when it was most difficult. That evidence of capability would sustain me through whatever challenges tomorrow would bring. My final scheduled chemotherapy treatment fell on a Thursday in early autumn, when the maple trees outside the oncology center had just begun their transformation from green to brilliant orange. I arrived at 8:30 a.m., wrapped in Vivian's soft blue cashmere shawl, Mia at my side carrying the tote bag containing my treatment essentials, water bottle, light snacks, journal, headphones, and tablet loaded with meditation recordings. The oncology center had become familiar territory over the past months. The gentle hum of medical equipment, the hushed conversations of nurses and patients, the distinct hospital scent masked by lavender diffusers. I checked in at the reception desk, where Linda, the coordinator who had witnessed my entire treatment journey, greeted me with warm recognition. "Final scheduled session," she noted, emphasizing the word scheduled in acknowledgement of the uncertain path that often followed initial treatment protocols. "Dr. Evans wants to see you before you start. She's in consultation room 3. Dr. Evans was reviewing my file when I entered, her silver-framed glasses perched on her nose as she studied recent lab results. She looked up with a smile that contained both professional assessment and personal warmth developed over months of shared medical battle. "Your numbers are looking good, Rebecca," she began, gesturing for me to sit. "White blood cell count has rebounded nicely since the last session, and your other markers are showing the response we've been hoping for." She turned her tablet toward me, displaying charts tracking various measurements throughout my treatment. The downward trend of tumor markers was clear, a visual representation of the battle my body had been fighting with medical reinforcement. "This final session will follow the same protocol as the previous one," she continued. "We'll take another comprehensive blood panel immediately afterward, then schedule follow-up scans in 3 weeks to assess overall response." Dr. Evans paused, her expression shifting subtly. "Nurse Torres mentioned your living situation has stabilized. How are you managing the practical aspects of recovery alongside everything else?" The question was carefully framed to respect professional boundaries while acknowledging the personal crisis that had coincided with my treatment. Dr. Evans had maintained this balanced approach throughout, medically focused, but never ignoring the human context of illness. "I've established a structured support system," I replied, matching her professional tone. "Temporary housing with appropriate recovery accommodations, transportation arrangements for appointments, and regular consultations with both legal counsel and financial advisors to address the transition period." Dr. Evans nodded, a flicker of approval crossing her features. "That's remarkably comprehensive. Many patients find it challenging to coordinate even basic support during treatment, let alone during additional personal crisis. Cancer teaches effective project management, I said with a small smile. When your life depends on coordinating multiple specialists, medications, and appointments, you develop transferable skills. This earned a genuine laugh from Dr. Evans. I may quote you on that. It's an excellent reframing of the burden patients carry. She closed my file and stood. Let's get you settled for this final session. Nurse Carter will be overseeing your treatment today. The treatment room was arranged with 6 recliners positioned to offer both medical accessibility and relative privacy. As I settled into my assigned chair, Nurse Carter efficiently checked my port for proper function before beginning the pre-medication protocol designed to minimize side effects. Dr. Evans has ordered the standard anti-nausea medication, plus an additional hydration bag given your recent lab values, she explained while programming the infusion pump. Total treatment time will be approximately 4 hours. I'll be monitoring you throughout. I arranged my comfort items, headphones ready, water bottle positioned within easy reach, journal open to a fresh page. The routine had become almost ritualistic over the past months, each element designed to make the necessary medical invasion as manageable as possible. As the first medication began flowing through my port, I closed my eyes and initiated the visualization technique Dr. Patel had taught me, imagining the drugs as golden light flowing through my body, seeking and destroying any remaining cancer cells. The imagery wasn't merely comforting. Studies suggested such visualization could potentially enhance treatment effectiveness by reducing stress hormones that might interfere with immune response. Halfway through my session, during a brief pause between medication changes, I opened my eyes to find Nurse Carter standing beside my chair with an uncomfortable expression. "Ms. Calloway, there's a situation at reception," she said quietly. "Your husband is attempting to gain access to the treatment area. Security has been notified about the protective order, but he's insisting he has information crucial to your medical care that must be delivered personally." The calm I had carefully cultivated during treatment wavered momentarily. This was the confrontation I had anticipated, but hoped to avoid, at least until my physical recovery was further advanced. "Has he been informed that any medical information can be provided to Dr. Evans directly?" I asked, maintaining my composure despite the disruption. "Yes, but he's being quite insistent," Nurse Carter replied. "Hospital security is present, and Dr. Evans has been notified. They're requesting your preference. Would you like them to remove him from the premises, or would you prefer to have a security-supervised brief conversation to resolve the situation?" I considered my options carefully. Having Daniel forcibly removed might escalate his behavior, potentially creating ongoing disruptions to my treatment facility. A brief controlled interaction with appropriate safeguards might resolve the immediate situation more effectively. "I'll speak with him briefly," I decided, "but only with security present, in a public area, and for no more than 5 minutes. And I'd prefer to finish this medication cycle first." Nurse Carter nodded. "I'll relay that, and I'll stay with you throughout the interaction if you'd like additional support." "Thank you," I said, genuinely appreciative of her professional handling of a situation that went beyond normal nursing duties. 40 minutes later, with my current medication cycle completed and a natural break in the treatment protocol, I was escorted to a small meeting room near the reception area. The space was deliberately public. Glass walls facing the nurses' station, security officer positioned just inside the door, Nurse Carter standing unobtrusively in the corner. Daniel was already seated when I entered, his appearance noticeably different from when I'd last seen him just over 2 weeks earlier. His normally meticulous presentation had deteriorated, his shirt slightly rumpled, his hair less precisely styled, shadows visible beneath his eyes. The changes weren't dramatic enough to suggest complete dissolution, but rather the strain of unexpected consequences disrupting his carefully planned exit strategy. His expression when he saw me reflected competing emotions: concern immediately, replaced by calculation, then deliberately rearranged into an approximation of worried affection. The performance was skilled but now transparent to me, like watching an actor whose techniques I had finally learned to recognize. "Rebecca," he began, half rising before the security officer subtly indicated he should remain seated. "I've been trying to reach you. I was worried." "I believe the protective order was quite clear about contact restrictions," I interrupted, taking the seat across from him. The small table between us provided both physical and psychological distance. "What medical information is so urgent that it required violating that order?" My direct approach visibly disrupted his prepared script. He had anticipated emotional vulnerability, perhaps tears or accusations, not this calm, professional demeanor. "This has all been a terrible misunderstanding," he said, leaning forward with practiced earnestness. "The apartment information you found? It was meant to be a recovery space for you after treatment. Somewhere peaceful, away from the memories of illness in our home. It was going to be a surprise." The explanation was skillfully crafted, plausible, enough to seed doubt in someone eager to believe, detailed enough to suggest authenticity. But it failed to address the text message, the unauthorized prescription, the hidden financial accounts. "And the separate bank accounts?" I asked evenly. "The unauthorized access to my medical information? The mystery woman whose text I saw? All surprises for my recovery?" Daniel's expression flickered briefly before settling into wounded sincerity. "The accounts were for managing medical expenses separately to track for insurance and tax purposes. The prescription was because you were too exhausted to go yourself. I was trying to help. As for the text, that was a colleague working on the surprise arrangements. Everything has been misinterpreted in the worst possible way." His performance was impressive, each explanation internally consistent, each justification crafted to appear reasonable when viewed in isolation. Had I been the same person I was before cancer, eager to maintain harmony, hesitant to confront, his narrative might have created sufficient doubt to undermine my resolve. "Daniel," I said quietly, "we both know that's not true. The protective order remains in effect. Any necessary communication should go through our respective attorneys. My medical team has been fully informed about our separation and the potential implications for my care." I stood, signaling the end of our interaction. "My treatment needs to continue now. Please respect the legal boundaries that have been established." Daniel's facade cracked momentarily, frustration bleeding through his carefully maintained concern. "You can't just shut me out like this. I have rights. We're still married. That house is half mine. The insurance policy is through my employment. You need me until this treatment is completed at the very least." The naked calculation in this last statement, the explicit acknowledgement that his interest extended only until my treatment concluded, confirmed everything I had deduced about his planned timeline. "My attorney will contact yours regarding property division and insurance transition," I replied calmly. "All other matters are addressed in the protective order, which remains in force. Goodbye, Daniel." As I turned to leave, he made one final attempt. "Rebecca, wait! Your mother wouldn't want you to throw away our marriage like this. She always believed in forgiveness, in working through problems." The invocation of my mother, using her memory as emotional leverage, was so fundamentally offensive that I paused, turning back to face him directly. "My mother believed in truth above all else," I said, my voice steady despite the anger his manipulation had triggered. "She taught me to recognize the difference between authentic forgiveness and self-destructive denial. Don't presume to use her memory to manipulate me." With that, I left the room, Nurse Carter accompanying me back to the treatment area, while security ensured Daniel exited the facility. As we walked, she glanced at me with professional assessment. "Your blood pressure and heart rate will be elevated. After that interaction," she observed, "let's take a few minutes for them to stabilize before resuming treatment." In the quiet of the treatment room, I practiced the grounding techniques Dr. Patel had taught me. 5 conscious breaths, awareness of physical contact points with the chair, mental inventory of immediate sensory experiences. The approach effectively calmed my physiological response, allowing treatment to resume with minimal disruption. As the final medication of my treatment protocol flowed through my port, I reflected on the confrontation with Daniel. His appearance at the oncology center represented both desperation and calculation, an attempt to re-establish control using my medical vulnerability as leverage. Yet something unexpected had emerged from the interaction, confirmation of my own transformation. I had faced his practiced manipulation with clear perception and boundary enforcement, neither engaging in emotional combat nor yielding to doubt. The woman who had once instinctively accommodated his narrative had been replaced by someone who recognized manipulation without being captured by it. This wasn't merely emotional growth. It was a fundamental shift in perception that cancer had catalyzed. Facing mortality had stripped away the comfortable illusions and conflict-avoidant tendencies that had previously defined my response to relationship challenges. What remained was a clearer, more essential self, less concerned with maintaining appearances, more committed to recognizing reality. As Nurse Carter removed my port access at the conclusion of treatment, she offered a simple observation. "You handled that situation remarkably well. Many patients would have been too destabilized to continue treatment effectively afterward." "Cancer becomes an effective priority filter," I replied. "It clarifies what deserves your limited energy and what doesn't." "I might borrow that perspective," she said with a smile, applying the final bandage to my port site. "Your follow-up appointment with Dr. Evans is scheduled for next Monday to assess initial response and manage any persistent side effects." Mia was waiting in the reception area, her expression a mix of concern and protective anger. "The nurse told me what happened. Are you okay? I can't believe he showed up here of all places." "I'm okay," I assured her as we walked toward the key parking area. Actually, the confrontation was clarifying. Seeing his manipulation tactics from this new perspective confirmed I'm making the right decisions. As we drove toward Aunt Catherine's garden apartment, where I would spend the coming days managing the predictable aftermath of treatment, fatigue, nausea, temporary immune suppression, I recognized that this first confrontation had demonstrated something crucial. The protective measures I had implemented weren't just theoretical safeguards, but practical, effective boundaries against emotional manipulation. Daniel had deployed his most persuasive tactics: reasonable explanations, emotional appeals, invocation of shared history. Yet they had failed to penetrate the clarity that illness and betrayal had paradoxically granted me. The confrontation had been a test of my newly established boundaries, and those boundaries had held. That evening, as I documented the interaction in my journal while managing the initial waves of post-treatment fatigue, I wrote, "Today marked both an ending and a confirmation, the conclusion of my formal treatment protocol and the validation of my capacity to maintain boundaries, even in physically vulnerable circumstances." The woman who began this cancer journey 9 months ago would have doubted her own perceptions when faced with Daniel's explanations. The woman completing treatment today recognized manipulation without being captured by it. This recognition wasn't triumphant or celebratory. I was too physically depleted for such emotions. Instead, it represented a quiet acknowledgement of capacity discovered through adversity. Cancer and betrayal had not diminished me. They had distilled me to a more essential perceptive self. As I drifted toward sleep that night, my body beginning the now familiar process of responding to treatment, I carried this awareness forward. The first confrontation had confirmed not just Daniel's deception, but my own transformation. Whatever challenges lay ahead in recovery and reorganization, I would face them with this hard-won clarity as my foundation. 3 days after my final scheduled chemotherapy treatment, while managing the familiar cycle of side effects, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. winterscaldwelllegal.com. The subject line read simply, "Important information. Daniel Calloway." My first instinct was to delete it as a potential phishing attempt, but something about the professional email domain made me hesitate. Caldwell Legal was a mid-sized corporate firm downtown, not the type of organization typically associated with scam emails. After a moment's consideration, I opened the message. "Ms. Calloway, my name is Vanessa Winters, a corporate attorney with Caldwell Legal. I represent North Star Insurance Group, where I've been working closely with your husband on their account for the past year. I'm writing to you against significant personal and professional risk because information has come to my attention that I believe you should be aware of, particularly given your health situation. I understand there is currently a protective order in place between you and Daniel. I am not attempting to facilitate contact between you, but rather to provide information that may be relevant to your safety and well-being. If you're willing to meet with me to discuss this matter, please contact me at the number below. I would prefer to share the details in person rather than via email. Regards, Vanessa Winters, J.D." I stared at the screen, reading the message twice more before setting my laptop aside. The carefully worded email raised immediate questions. Who was Vanessa Winters? What was her relationship with Daniel? And most importantly, what information did she possess that warranted this unusual outreach? The phrase, "relevant to your safety and well-being," was particularly concerning, suggesting something beyond the betrayal and financial deception I had already discovered. I forwarded the email to Elise with a brief note asking for her assessment before taking any action. Her response came within the hour. "I've verified Vanessa Winters is legitimate. Senior associate at Caldwell specializing in insurance litigation. Recommend proceeding with caution. If you decide to meet, do so only in my office with me present." After consulting with both Elise and Dr. Patel, who emphasized the importance of managing potentially stressful new information within a supported context, I arranged a meeting for the following afternoon at Elise's office. The timing worked well with my post-treatment recovery cycle. Day 4 typically brought marginally improved energy before the onset of deeper fatigue. Vanessa Winters arrived at precisely the scheduled time, her professional appearance conveying corporate competence, tailored navy suit, minimal jewelry, sleek blonde hair arranged in a simple chignon. I estimated she was in her mid-30s, perhaps 5 years younger than me. As she took her seat in Elise's conference room, I noticed her practiced composure was underlined with tension, evident in her tightly clasped hands. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," she began after introductions were complete. "I should clarify immediately that Daniel doesn't know I'm here. My decision to contact you involves significant professional risk." "I appreciate your candor," I replied. "What information do you believe I should know?" Vanessa placed a leather portfolio on the table, removing several documents which she arranged methodically before speaking. "I'm the lead attorney for North Star Insurance Group's corporate division. About 10 months ago, Daniel approached me regarding a specialized insurance product for high-net-worth individuals." She paused, meeting my gaze directly. "Specifically, he inquired about enhanced life insurance policies with accelerated payment options and limited contestability periods." Elise leaned forward slightly, her attention sharpening. "What type of policy did Mr. Calloway eventually purchase?" "A $3 million universal life policy on Rebecca, with Daniel as sole beneficiary," Vanessa replied, sliding the first document toward us. "It includes a double indemnity clause for accidental death and a remarkably short contestability period of only 1 year, which would expire next month." The implications settled heavily in the room. A contestability period represented the time frame during which an insurance company could investigate and potentially deny claims due to application misrepresentations. Once expired, even policies obtained through misrepresentation became much more difficult to contest. The timing aligns precisely with my diagnosis, I observed, maintaining clinical detachment despite the disturbing revelation. The policy was purchased immediately afterward. Yes, Vanessa confirmed. And there are several concerning irregularities. The medical questionnaire contains responses inconsistent with what would have been known about your condition at that time. There's also, she hesitated before continuing, evidence suggesting signature irregularities on the application. Documents. Forgery, Elise stated bluntly. That would be my assessment, Vanessa agreed. Though I'm not a forensic documentation expert. I examined the application she provided, immediately recognizing discrepancies in what was purportedly my signature. The forgery was skillful but contained subtle differences in how I formed certain letters. Differences only I would immediately notice. I never signed this, I confirmed. I wasn't even aware of this policy's existence. Vanessa nodded, as if expecting this response. There's more. 2 weeks ago, Daniel began inquiring about claim processing procedures for accidental death scenarios. His questions focused specifically on investigation protocols for medication interactions, resulting in fatal outcomes. The clinical detachment I had maintained faltered momentarily as the implication became clear. Daniel hadn't merely been planning to leave after my treatment concluded. He had potentially been considering a more permanent solution to end our marriage. This information obviously raises serious concerns, Elise interjected, likely noticing my momentary loss of composure. What prompted you to bring this to Rebecca's attention, Ms. Winters, rather than to law enforcement or your compliance department? Vanessa's professional facade softened slightly, revealing genuine discomfort. Initially, I attributed Daniel's inquiries to professional thoroughness. He explained the policy as financial protection given your diagnosis, which seemed reasonable. Insurance professionals frequently discuss claim scenarios hypothetically. She straightened a paper clip on the table before continuing. What changed was learning about the protective order. One of our administrative staff saw a notice in the legal bulletin and mentioned it to me. The combination of Daniel's specific questions about accidental death investigations and discovering he was legally barred from contacting you created a pattern I couldn't ignore. Yet you didn't report these concerns officially, Elise noted, her tone neutral but pointed. There are complications, Vanessa admitted. North Star is one of our firm's largest clients. Daniel has cultivated close relationships with several senior partners. Any official allegation would require substantial evidence and could potentially impact my position if not substantiated. Her candor about professional self-interest was refreshing, if concerning. So why risk contacting me? At all? I asked. Vanessa met my gaze directly. Because if something happened to you, and I had recognized these warning signs but remained silent, I couldn't live with that choice. Professional consequences are manageable. Knowing I could have prevented harm isn't. The conference room fell silent as I processed this information alongside everything else I had learned about Daniel's deception. The insurance policy represented a significant escalation, moving beyond betrayal and financial self-interest into potential planning for harm. What would you recommend as next steps? I asked finally, addressing both Vanessa and Elise. From a legal perspective, Elise began, we should file an immediate fraud report with both the insurance company and law enforcement. The forged signature alone constitutes a criminal offense. Vanessa nodded in agreement. North Star has strict policies regarding insurance fraud. Once officially notified, they're obligated to investigate regardless of client relationships. I can provide guidance on filing the report effectively, though I can't be officially connected to the initial complaint. There's also the matter of your immediate safety, Elise added. This information potentially changes our risk assessment regarding the protective order enforcement. I considered their recommendations through both emotional and strategic lenses. The revealed insurance scheme was disturbing on multiple levels, yet it also provided powerful leverage for ensuring my continued protection. I want to proceed. With both the fraud report and enhanced safety measures, I decided, but I'd like to approach this methodically to ensure maximum effectiveness. For the next hour, the three of us developed a comprehensive response plan. Elise would file official fraud reports with both the insurance commissioner and the district attorney's office, including the forged application and supporting documentation provided by Vanessa. The protective order would be amended to include enhanced enforcement provisions based on the new evidence suggesting potential intent to harm. My medical team would implement additional medication safeguards, including witnessed administration of any treatments during my remaining hospital visits. Security measures at Aunt Catherine's garden apartment would be upgraded to include motion detection cameras and direct connection alarm systems. Most importantly, all actions would be implemented simultaneously to prevent Daniel from addressing one vulnerability while others remained exposed. As our meeting concluded, Vanessa gathered her documents, carefully separating copies provided as evidence from her original materials. I should note that once the fraud investigation begins, my firm will likely represent North Star's interests. My ability to communicate directly with you will end at that point. I understand, I replied. Thank you for coming forward despite the professional risks. She paused, seeming to consider her next words carefully. May I ask a personal question? How are you managing to handle this so methodically? Most people would be overwhelmed by these circumstances. The question reflected curiosity I'd encountered repeatedly throughout this ordeal, surprise at my analytical approach to devastating personal betrayal. My response had evolved through these iterations. Cancer forces you to separate emotional reactions from necessary actions, I explained. When your treatment protocol requires functioning through fear, pain, and uncertainty, you develop compartmentalization skills that transfer to other crises. This situation is emotionally devastating, but the required actions remain clear regardless of how I feel about them. Vanessa nodded thoughtfully. That's remarkably adaptive. I hope your recovery continues successfully, both from cancer and from this betrayal. After Vanessa departed, Elise and I remained to finalize implementation details for our response plan. As we worked, she observed, unexpected allies often emerge in crisis situations. I've seen it throughout my career. People stepping forward with crucial information despite personal or professional risk. It's a counterbalance to the betrayal, I reflected. For every person who abandons their commitments, another demonstrates integrity beyond obligation. This pattern had appeared repeatedly throughout my dual journey through cancer and betrayal. Medical professionals extending themselves beyond technical requirements, friends providing support without hesitation, even relative strangers like Vanessa making difficult ethical choices that placed principle above convenience. The insurance revelation, disturbing as it was, also provided definitive clarification about Daniel's character and intentions. Any lingering doubt or emotional ambivalence about our separation dissolved in the face of this evidence. The man I had married, who had vowed to support me through illness, had potentially been contemplating harm rather than merely abandonment. That evening, as I documented the day's developments in my journal at Aunt Catherine's garden apartment, I found myself reflecting on the contrast between Daniel's betrayal and Vanessa's choice to provide warning despite personal risk. The dual nature of human capacity was starkly illustrated, the potential for both calculated self-interest and principled action existing within our complex social fabric. My post-treatment physical symptoms remained challenging. The familiar pattern of fatigue, digestive disturbances, and joint pain required careful management. Yet the emotional clarity provided by Vanessa's revelations created a strange counterbalance to physical discomfort. The path forward had been further illuminated, removing ambiguity about necessary boundaries and protections. As I completed my evening medication protocol, I added a final note to my journal entry. Today brought confirmation of both danger and protection. evidence of potential harm intended, but also of strangers willing to prevent it. The universe seems to operate in these balanced equations, providing resources alongside challenges when we remain attentive to both. The next morning, Elise called to confirm that all elements of our response plan had been initiated simultaneously. The insurance fraud report had been filed with both regulatory authorities and law enforcement. The protective order enhancement request had been submitted with expedited review, and the security upgrades at the apartment were being installed that afternoon. The insurance company has already placed a hold on the policy pending investigation, she informed me. Their fraud division responded immediately given the documentation we provided. Has Daniel been notified of the investigation? I asked. Not yet. The investigators want to secure additional evidence before making official contact. But he'll be notified within the next 48 hours according to regulatory requirements. This timing aligned with my physical recovery cycle. By the time Daniel learned of the investigation, I would have progressed further through the post-treatment phase, potentially with improved energy to manage any resulting complications. Later that afternoon, as the security technicians completed installation of enhanced protection systems at the apartment, Aunt Catherine brought tea to the patio where I was resting. The security company explained the new features, she mentioned casually, setting the tray on the small table between us. Quite sophisticated technology. Is there something specific prompting these upgrades that I should be aware of? Her question reflected practical concern rather than intrusive curiosity. As my temporary housemate, she had legitimate interest in potential safety issues affecting her property. We've discovered some concerning information about Daniel's intentions, I explained, providing a simplified version of the insurance policy revelation. The enhanced security is primarily precautionary based on legal advice. Catherine absorbed this information with remarkable composure. At 72, she had navigated her own share of life's challenges with the quiet resilience characteristic of her generation. I suspected something beyond typical marital difficulties, she acknowledged. Your careful approach to the separation seemed disproportionate to mere infidelity. She poured tea for both of us before adding, I'm glad you have proper legal support and that this person at the insurance company had the integrity to warn you. The unexpected ally, I murmured, recalling Elise's observation. Life often operates that way, Catherine reflected. When one support fails, another emerges if we remain open to recognizing it. Your mother understood that pattern well. The mention of my mother provided unexpected comfort. Throughout this ordeal, I had often thought of how she had faced her terminal diagnosis with both practical clarity and emotional authenticity. Her example had unconsciously guided my response to both cancer and betrayal. Mom would have liked Vanessa, I said with a small smile. She always appreciated people who did the right thing, despite inconvenience. Elizabeth valued integrity above almost everything else, Catherine agreed. She would be proud of how you're handling this situation, protecting yourself without surrendering to bitterness. As the security technicians completed their work, providing a brief tutorial on the new system's operation, I recognized that the day's developments represented another crucial step in rebuilding safety. The unexpected ally had provided not just specific information about potential danger, but also catalyzed concrete protective measures that would support my continued recovery. That evening, Dr. Evans called with preliminary results from blood work taken immediately following my final treatment. Your markers are showing significant positive response, she reported. The treatment protocol appears to be achieving the desired effect. This medical validation provided powerful counterbalance to the emotional complexity of the day. While navigating Daniel's profound betrayal required substantial energy, my body was simultaneously demonstrating its capacity for healing and response. As I completed my journal entry that night, I noted this striking parallel. Today brought confirmation of both physical healing and enhanced protection. My body responds to treatment while my support systems respond to revealed threat. Both processes require patience, appropriate intervention, and trust in gradual progress rather than immediate resolution. The unexpected ally had delivered difficult truth, yet that truth had immediately strengthened my position through concrete protective measures. This pattern of challenge and corresponding resource continued to emerge throughout my dual journey, suggesting a fundamental balance that persisted even in seemingly overwhelming circumstances. 2 weeks after my final chemotherapy treatment, just as I was beginning to regain consistent energy, my recovery trajectory encountered its first significant obstacle. The morning began routinely. I completed my medication protocol, enjoyed a light breakfast on the patio, and prepared for a scheduled telemedicine check-in with Dr. Evans to discuss my approaching follow-up scans. As I logged into the hospital's patient portal to review my recent lab results before the appointment, an alert notification appeared on my screen. Insurance authorization pending. Upcoming imaging studies require review. The message indicated that my newly established individual insurance plan was questioning the medical necessity of the comprehensive follow-up scans essential for evaluating my treatment response. My heart rate accelerated slightly as I clicked through to the detailed notification. The insurance review cited insufficient documentation of ongoing treatment necessity and requested additional clinical justification before authorizing the critical PET CT scans scheduled for the following week. These scans would determine whether the chemotherapy had successfully addressed all cancer sites, or if additional treatment would be required. During my video appointment 30 minutes later, Dr. Evans confirmed my concerns. "We're seeing this more frequently with transitional coverage," she explained, her frustration evident despite her professional demeanor. "When patients change insurance mid-treatment, the new providers often request excessive documentation to establish continuity of care." "What's the timeline for resolution?" I asked, maintaining my practiced analytical approach, despite the anxiety building beneath my composed exterior. "Standard appeals typically take 15 to 20 business days," she replied. "We've filed an expedited appeal based on medical necessity, which should receive a response within 5 business days. My office has submitted comprehensive documentation explaining why these scans are essential for your care planning." 5 business days translated to a full week of waiting, a week of uncertainty during the critical evaluation period when clear information about my cancer status was most essential for determining next steps. This delay wasn't merely an administrative inconvenience. It potentially impacted treatment planning that could affect my long-term prognosis. "Is there any alternative if the authorization remains delayed?" I asked, mentally calculating financial scenarios. "We could proceed with the scans as self-pay," Dr. Evans acknowledged reluctantly. "But the cost would be substantial, approximately $1,300 to $800 for the complete diagnostic protocol. If the insurance eventually approves retroactively, you could seek reimbursement, but that process itself can be lengthy and uncertain." After ending the call with Dr. Evans, I immediately contacted Elise to understand the legal implications of this development. Her assessment was direct and concerning. "This appears to be more than routine insurance review," she informed me after investigating further. "The timing suggests potential interference. Daniel's employer provides your previous coverage through United Medical, but your new individual plan is through Health Partners. According to my contact in healthcare law, there's evidence someone has submitted information to your new insurance provider questioning the medical necessity of continued cancer monitoring." "Can Daniel do that?" I asked, momentarily struggling to maintain my composed approach. "I'm no longer on his insurance plan." "Not legitimately," Elise clarified, "but insurance systems are vulnerable to deliberate confusion, especially during coverage transitions. Someone with knowledge of your medical details and previous insurance information could potentially raise flags that trigger reviews. We can't prove it's Daniel directly, but the timing, immediate after he was notified about the insurance fraud investigation, suggests targeted disruption rather than routine administrative review." This calculated interference represented a significant escalation in Daniel's approach. Rather than merely separating his life from mine, he now appeared to be actively creating obstacles to my medical care. The implications were both practically concerning and emotionally destabilizing. This was no longer passive abandonment, but active obstruction of essential health care. The setback required immediate strategic response on multiple fronts. While Dr. Evans pursued the expedited appeal through medical channels, Elise initiated legal countermeasures, filing an emergency petition with the court handling our case. The petition sought both immediate injunctive relief, prohibiting any insurance interference, and financial authorization for necessary medical procedures pending final divorce settlement. Meanwhile, I faced practical decisions about proceeding, with the essential scans if insurance authorization remained delayed. The $1,300 cost represented a significant portion of my secured emergency funds, potentially compromising my longer-term financial stability during the extended recovery period ahead. That evening, as I updated my situation journal with these new developments, the physical and emotional impact of the setback finally penetrated the protective compartmentalization I had maintained. My hands trembled slightly as I documented the insurance interference, the pen creating uncharacteristically uneven lines across the page. For the first time since discovering Daniel's betrayal, I felt momentarily overwhelmed by the compounding challenges. Cancer treatment alone required enormous physical and emotional resources. Navigating deliberate obstruction of that treatment, while still recovering from the physical effects of chemotherapy, tested the limits of my carefully cultivated resilience. As tears finally came, the first I had allowed myself since the initial discovery, Aunt Catherine knocked gently on my door, responding to the unusual sound of muffled crying from my normally composed presence. "Rebecca?" she called softly. "May I come in?" When I opened the door, attempting to discreetly wipe away evidence of tears, Catherine simply said, "Ah, there they are. I was wondering when they would finally arrive." Her matter-of-fact acknowledgement of my tears as expected rather than concerning created space for authentic emotional expression without dramatic emphasis. She sat beside me on the small sofa, offering a handkerchief without comment or demand for explanation. "The insurance authorization for my follow-up scans is being delayed," I finally explained. "Likely deliberately, according to Elise. The timing is critical for determining whether additional treatment will be necessary." Catherine nodded, absorbing this information without the alarmed reaction many would offer. "Financial obstruction is particularly insidious," she observed. "It leverages systems designed for legitimate purposes to create targeted harm while maintaining plausible deniability." Her clear-eyed assessment matched my own analytical approach, creating unexpected connection through shared perception rather than emotional commiseration. After a moment of thoughtful silence, she added, "You know, your grandfather faced something similar during his final illness." I looked up with surprise. I had never heard this family story before. Edward's business partner attempted to remove him from their company health plan while he was undergoing treatment for heart disease, Catherine explained. This was before the current legal protections existed. The partner claimed it was a simple administrative error, but the timing was suspicious, just as negotiations for buying Edward's share of the business had stalled. "What happened?" I asked, genuinely curious about this previously unknown family history. "Your grandfather didn't fight the way you are," Catherine replied, a hint of old sadness coloring her voice. "He depleted their retirement savings paying for treatments rather than challenging the partner directly. The financial strain accelerated his decline more than the heart condition itself. Your grandmother never fully recovered financially." She placed her hand gently over mine. "That's why seeing your methodical response to Daniel's tactics gives me particular satisfaction. You're breaking a generational pattern of absorbing harm rather than confronting it directly. This perspective transformed my temporary emotional overwhelm from weakness into an appropriate human response within a larger context of effective action. The tears were not evidence of collapse, but simply an authentic emotional component of an otherwise strategic approach to compounding challenges. I don't know if the legal countermeasures will work quickly enough, I admitted. The scans need to happen next week for optimal treatment planning. Catherine was quiet for a moment, then asked, "What's the approximate cost if you needed to proceed without insurance authorization?" "Around $1,300 to $800, I replied. "I have it in my emergency fund, but using it would compromise my longer-term financial stability during recovery." Catherine nodded thoughtfully. "I have a proposition. Consider it a bridge loan rather than assistance. I'll cover the scan costs now, and you can repay me when the insurance matter resolves or when your financial settlement with Daniel is finalized." I started to protest, but she continued with practical firmness. "This is strategic resource allocation, Rebecca, not charity. Your immediate health information is non-negotiable, while financial balances can be adjusted later. I'm offering a practical solution to a timing problem." Her framing resonated with my own approach to challenges, identifying the truly essential element, in this case, timely medical information, and securing it while creating flexible arrangements for secondary concerns. Still, accepting financial help represented a significant step beyond my fiercely independent approach to the entire situation. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.